and welcome to my channel. Super happy to see you here. My name is Aksik, aka Nika, and this time I am going to have a little chat and bits of demonstration about the subject that I've promised to talk about for a while, and that is protecting your coloring book when working on your page with watercolors. Obviously, I need to do that a lot because I love using watercolor in my books, and it is one of my favorite mediums. I'm not saying I don't use anything else and this is the only thing I use. In actuality, I love to use variety of things, and that's the main thing that keeps me kind of interested and intrigued and happy to keep on with that hobby. But watercolor, yes, is one of my favorites. So this page now is it's not really awfully relevant, this video, but this book is by Nature Odyssey, A Wild Coloring Journey by Chris Garver. It's an interesting book. It's probably not one of my favorites, but it has some fun images in it, and I like to use this book for something sort of a experimentation and, you know, just trying things out. The paper on the first glance is lovely, but does not actually like water at all. Water goes through immediately. Let me see if I can see that's what happens when you work with, in this case I had worked with water-based markers that were diluted with water and picked up from the cutting board. But, you know, I did the base with these, and that is what the page looks from the other side. So, you know, that's pretty strong sink. It does not love paper. I haven't actually tried straight watercolor, to be honest. I've tried only water-based markers, so maybe it's a bit better with straight watercolors, although I suspect it would be not. Actually, I might as well do it now. We can do a quick test here. Since we're here, what color am I going to? Yeah, we'll just take a really lovely flame red. I presume they're going to be, and you can see how the water just immediately sinks into the paper. There's no spreading it. See, it just is really bad with water. So, and that's from the other side. It's immediately true. Of course, I didn't protect either of these pages, but I will probably not do these pages. They're not really my favorites, you know, the patterned animals, though I might, in which case it won't bother me. Anyways, I treated this page with Daniel Smith watercolor ground diluted, because I think I don't want kind of total resist. I want a bit of a, you know, some sort of a sizing to the paper, but not kind of water resistance like these mediums tend to give, which bring their own problems working with watercolors. So I treated this page here, and this is just, you know, me, I'm planning to just test out how the water, you know, how the Daniel Smith watercolor ground will influence this paper. And therefore I will, of course, do the kind of a page protection, and you could just be with the journey, on the journey here with me. Now, the main dangers is not just paint sinking through the paper, which we already know this can happen. And I am, you know, if it still happens, I am willing to sacrifice that page. It's fine. I probably will not do that page. And even if I do, I might do it with acrylics or acrylic markers. The main issue that happens to me more often than anything, even if I have something behind the page, and usually it's some sort of a waterproof paper or wax paper or something like this, which has the waterproof wax layer, is that the water seeps, like as the paper moves a bit, and there's a gap between the paper, and usually it happens from the top, because that's what you pull from your brush from the top. If you're painting the background, you often, you know, go up there and you pull down, and as you pull down, you push the water to the other side of the page. Essentially, it runs down between the paper and the backing paper. And especially if the backing paper is wax-based, therefore it doesn't absorb itself anything. You know, we use baking paper usually, or other wax papers, which don't really help that situation, because they make actually situation worse, because they don't absorb themselves anything. And also often the paper, if it's like that at the back, nothing is really securing it to the paper, so it tends to move a bit and therefore pull the paint that is already on it to the back of the paper. So, and you know, this one is actually has quite a little, and that's, you know, very easy to disguise should I, you know, go for this page. But on in some books or on some pages, I have pretty strong kind of a water run on the top of the page here. And another danger, of course, with a big wash is that it kind of runs through in the binding. You can see how it's run through the binding here. And for this one, I can't really suggest much of a help, except that if it's, you know, if you work like I worked here, you know, you want it to be kind of a double page spread that, you know, matches the other one, and it all be kind of one whole thing. There's really no way to disguise or protect this binding here. What you can do is, if it's two separate pages and you are protecting the page just with the washi tape or masking tape, the next page like this, that you bring it slightly over to kind of very, very slightly cover the binding, so the water doesn't run into the binding. Or if you don't, you know, you can't really do that, you can just put very narrow, you can get those really, really narrow washi tapes. You can put a really narrow washi tape in the binding, and then if it's not a two-page spread, but you know, you just want matching pages, you can afterwards cover, you know, when you take it off, you can cover it kind of with a matching acrylic paint or matching watercolor paint in one layer quickly, so it would match the pages next to each other. But that's pretty much all I can suggest. There always will be, if you work with a big wash in a double page spread like this, there is a danger that it will go through into the binding, and there is no 100% method, at least in my head, that can actually prevent that. I have heard people putting down some kind of a like sealant here or wax or paint over these to seal these before painting, but it'll be still, you know, visible. So, you know, you can try different methods, but for me, I haven't really found anything. And to be honest, I'm not particularly bothered about it. I'm not hugely, you know, I'm probably a wrong person to do this video, because I don't really care if my books get a bit banged up. It makes them feel lived in and loved for me. So yeah, I probably don't protect my books as much as I should. And that sort of a protection I only really do if it's a double-sided book. If it's a one-sided book, most of the times I don't really bother, because, you know, there's nothing to protect on the other side. So if something goes through or seeps from the top, that's not really a problem. Anyways, let's talk about the things we can use and the different methods that exist to kind of protect the back of the page. So one of the things that I always suggest is that you use both the wax paper. This is now paper, one side is just a regular paper, okay? And one side is a wax paper. This is kind of it's a wax layer. I have some of that. I have papers that are total wax. Let me see if I can have like this, for example, is a kind of a like baking paper or wax paper. And that also provides a good protection. Or just a regular baking paper, or even tracing paper or vellum can work pretty well. They have some water resistance. But on top of that, printer paper, something that is slightly absorbent, and put that on the back as well. It also helps, you know, because if you wet the page like I do, if we put down really wet wash, because it kind of seeps through and these kind of get damp as well, it kind of sometimes helps to keep the page wet longer, you know, if you make it really wet. But yeah, and also if the paint runs from the top, you know, there is a bit of a hope that this paper absorbs it a little and it doesn't run into the behind the page. So the tapes I'm using are, I have different options. I've seen people using different tapes. Of course, the ever popular ones are the washi tapes, and I really like them. My main issue with them is this is the kind of a width I like the best usually. It all depends. Like I have different widths of washi tape, and the reason is that, you know, there's different. Like if I want to frame the image, it needs to be often a kind of smaller or narrower washi tape. It all depends, you know, how I operate in the book. But this is then, if I go with centimeters, I think it's 1.5 centimeter and a half an inch washi tape. And this is the one I use the most. The main problem with that one is, especially like it's they don't often come in very neutral colors. This one is fine, but if you have strong patterns like, you know, this one, well, this one isn't too bad either, but you know, there's polka dots or big floral patterns. If you actually frame your page with that, or, you know, put that next to the page, it kind of starts screwing with your color perception. And, you know, the way the colors on your page don't match with the washi tape, and it can really kind of mess up your brain and mess up your color scheme. Subconsciously, it can happen. So I kind of tend to try to find something fairly neutral, you know, something like this, you know, white, or, you know, these don't really bother me. Something with very little pattern or very simple pattern and fairly neutral gray or white, or possibly kind of a like sepia or kind of a cream colors. These don't bother me. So all these, you know, can work, although this already, you know, I kind of feel that if I were to try to do a really kind of a spring themed page with that washi tape bordering the page, it would start bothering me and screwing my brain. It is a thing, trust me. It's a thing. Now, because, but the other masking tapes have pretty much similar problem, but because they are one color at least, you know, then they're not patterned, I can kind of live with it. But I would dearly love that they would all come in white. Sadly, I haven't really found a good one that isn't too tacky that would come in pure white. Maybe somebody who watches this video knows about tape like this, and they will let me know, and I'd be cheerfully, you know, grateful to you and try it out. This is now just the regular masking tape, and it's pretty tacky. Like this one is super tacky, and to use that I need to basically put it against my clothes several times, and even then sometimes it's a challenge to get off, but we can get over it, and we'll talk about that also, and how to take it off afterwards. These two brands are good. Of course, you know, they're not foolproof, and I'm not saying just rip them off afterwards and they come off super easily. I would still put them against your pants or your dressing gown or pajamas or skirt or t-shirt, and, you know, put them against the clothes, pull them off once or twice, and then, you know, you're safer for taking it off afterwards. This brand is Tessa. It's called Tessa or Tessa. Don't know if you can see. Yeah, Tessa. You can get them in Amazon. I think they come in different widths. Mine is about a little bit, was it, which one is that? I really like this one. That one now is 1/2 inch. Sorry, the washi tape was not 1/2 inch, it was less. But with centimeters, I think it's 2 centimeters, yeah. It's 2 centimeters, 1/2 inch, and it's kind of a like good, you know, you can kind of see in the book here, you know, what the width of it is approximately, and it's really good kind of protecting. I would like one that, I haven't found one in that brand that is narrower. I would like one narrower one as well, maybe like 1.5 centimeter, that, or, you know, even narrower, kind of a like washi tape, because I find that width really good. But, you know, this is kind of the closest I've got, and this is the, like this, I like that width, which would be then 1.5 centimeters. That is, sorry, that is, yeah, 1.5 centimeters. And what is it, how do I say it in inches? It is kind of 1/2 inch, or 1/2 inch and a little. And what is that then? That is, oh, that's 3/4 of an inch. Sorry, the yellow one. I gave you wrong information. That's 3/4, and that is 1/2 inch. So, you know, I like that width the best, but that one is also good, and, you know, gives you a good protection if you kind of tend to be very loose in your painting, like I am, and, you know, wet your page really thoroughly, and then be, you know, very loose with a big brush, so you have less chances of hitting, because it happens to me more often than you think that I just hit with a brush against this page, because the tape is too narrow here. I just get into it, and I have just random spots that of paint here that my, you know, brush has hit the paper. As I said, I'm probably not the best person to talk about protecting the books, because I'm not very good at it. I know the theory. But, you know, to be super good and super precise about it, you need to kind of care about it more than I do. And I don't really mind, you know, odd stain here and there. And this one is also really good. And I haven't seen, I bet you there is a narrower version of that. But I really like it. It's the 3M one, and it's the lilac one, and that's for like delicate surfaces. It's actually kind of masking tape, of course, for painting, but it's really good. Absolutely love that one. You can, I don't know if you can see inside. It's a 3M. Is it upside down, or is it? I think you can see, yeah. And pretty sure you can get these also on Amazon, or any masking tape. Pretty much you can test that specifically says that it's for, you know, delicate surfaces. This is now a pretty wide one, and I use it for kind of a bigger jobs. This is a 1 inch width, so I have like several widths, you know, depending on what I am trying to do and what I'm going for. Now, since I started here working with the yellow tape, I'll show you a couple of things with washi tape first, kind of a first options that, you know, work for many people, and then kind of go from there. One good thing to do if you want to, you know, really make sure that you protect this page here is to take your tape. I'm not doing it at the moment because I'm not planning to do here, but take the tape and the backing paper, actually secure it, you know, not very, very heavily, but, you know, with a narrow strip like this between the binding and the page, and secure it to the page so it wouldn't move. I'm not particularly bothered about that one here, but I do it sometimes in certain books. I just leave a little bit of, you know, gap here for the tape to take. I turn the book, of course, because, you know, that one would be an awkward way to do it. I turn the book and then I roll the tape here to make sure that the backing paper, kind of the waterproof backing paper, stays in place. And there's definitely not, even if something gets onto this page or seeps, you know, onto the page here, at least the page next to it is going to be protected. So this way, this paper doesn't move and nothing gets here. Also, it's a fairly good idea to kind of have, if you like to work really loose and pull the paint in, often it's a good idea to have paper exactly fitting like this, so you won't get the paint onto the backing paper that then guides the paper behind, guides the paint behind the page. But you know, for this instance, I'm not going to do that. Also, sometimes, you know, a good idea to do, I'm showing you just, you know, one stretch, but because it kind of, you know, a lot of people don't think about it, but if you're really trying to protect all the edges, you take your paint, you're gonna, you know, you're working, let's say, on this page, and you want to protect everything here that is behind it. So firstly, you take the tape like this, and with a sticky side towards the paper, of course, you run the tape like this, so it's kind of sticking out from the book. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see. Let's do one side of the book and then pretty much take it off. And you do it for all 4 sides, and this is what it looks like. So you essentially taped off the edges of the book now. So if you are working off here, but you have to make sure that, you know, nothing is kind of buckled or stuck here, you know, everything is straight. And there is a danger that if you close the book, you know, things will stick. So you kind of have to be careful, because the sticky side here, you can hear, this is the sticky side actually on the page, you know, page you work. The thing that happens here is that when you are working with, you know, wet paper, because the paper will force the paper, the paint will, water will force the paper to buckle somewhat and kind of, you know, wave. Sometimes the paper still lifts off from the tape, you know, it's not that strong with tape. You can go with a stronger tape, but it's going to be a pain to take off afterwards. Possible, but a pain. But it does kind of protect mostly the paint going underneath anywhere, if you do all 4 sides with that method. The problem for me is often that it actually makes the, because you are for paper to relax, let's say you want to wet the whole page, the best way to do it is not to have any tape or anything holding it down anywhere at all, because you want the paper to be able to relax and contract back, because as you get it wet, it starts buckling more, but as it dries, it kind of settles, especially if it's kind of an overly and evenly wet. So if you have it taped off like that, it has not as good chance of doing that. So it doesn't protect the paper from buckling as much. I have another method which I use quite a lot now, which is one of my favorite methods, which makes, you know, it still kind of holds it down or binds it a little bit, but it lets the paper to kind of breathe and contract a bit more. And I find that so far the best method for me if I work on the double-sided book and I want to protect the page behind it. So now, taking the tape off, how is the situation here? How tacky are we? it's, of course, because it's still fairly fresh, it's coming off fairly easily. When you're taking it off, don't pull it upwards. Keep it like this, basically almost like your finger on the desk as you're pulling it off, and work slowly and kind of close to the paper. See, just slowly. And if it now gets, you know, still kind of stuck, then you can take this little thing or hair dryer. Either one is okay. Hair dryer on hot setting, or heat gun. I happen to have a heat gun from my good old crafting days, which are years and years in the past. And I use that pretty much. That's the only thing I really use it for. I don't really dry my pages, because drying a page with heat makes the paper buckle more. So, you know, if I can, and if I have a patience in any way, you know, I have several pages on the go, I do one layer of watercolor, I put it in the side and work on something else, as opposed to drying it with a heat gun, because the heat gun will sadly make paper buckle more, distorts the paper more, because the fact that the paper is drying very fast and unevenly, you know, the fibers are contracting unevenly and you get more creases. Whereas if it relaxes and dries on its own, you get less of them. Yes, it does help if you dry, you know, evenly like this. Don't do it in one spot. If you do it, if you decide, okay, I will dry the paper, I need to use this, then don't do it in one spot and just leave it there. Do it all over the page like this, with fairly quick movements like this, and then twist, turn, and do the back, and then go to the front and do the front again, and, you know, keep doing that front and back and front and back, and you get less buckling. But okay, let's take that one off now. It's sticking to my hands and it's annoying me. Okay, it's there. So here we are again, but my favorite method, okay, firstly, it does involve this paper as well. I have that one here, kind of a extra protection, but this is not my main protection at all. I like to cut a piece of wax paper the size of the book, you know, pretty much almost exactly the size of the book, and have that. And size of the paper book, and a tiny bit, like a millimeter smaller, so it'll, you know, fit well and doesn't really stick out. And that is actually the best way to have it behind your work, not sticking out much. And then in this instance we take two, because I need now paper to stick out on all sides, and I need it to be regular absorbent paper. And the best paper for that, best option really, and most available and cheapest option, is just to use regular printer paper. And I need two sheets here because one sheet is too narrow, so I overlap them so it'll stick out just about that much. So it's sticking out about this much, and I don't know how to show you now the back. I'll close it and see. That's how much it sticks out from the book. Okay, so because you can't really see, it's a big white for you. And now I have my page on top of it. I'm making sure that it's as close as the binding as I possibly can. Okay, and I'm taking now fairly kind of a, I like using this Tessa tape, the tape for it, size-wise, or, you know, something that sticks pretty well. And I'm taking strip about that big. It's not big at all. I'm putting it against my clothes. You can't see that, and you won't see that. Nobody needs to see my dressing gown. It's ratty. And I'm taking this piece of tape like this. Let me see. Can you see well? I'm lifting the corner And I'm putting it like this behind the corner and stick. So it sticks to the back of the page like this. And the smaller the better, to be honest, you know. I mean, the smaller the area it sticks to, the better. So I'm doing the other one. And it still, you know, causes a little bit of buckling, but way less than if you have the whole page cordoned off. And now I'm making sure here that this corner is nice and close. This corner is nice and close, so this paper is all in right spot. And I'm going behind this corner here and making it flat here. And I'm sticking it like this behind my page. Okay, and once again, making sure that everything is here, you know, close to the binding. So now for these backing papers not to move, let me pull that a bit closer here, because at the moment nothing is happening. And what I do now is I'm taking a piece of tape about that big, so it reaches up where the kind of a seam is in the papers. And this one, I don't need to be doing anything with my clothes or anything. I'm making sure that the page has as much room as possible. Kind of, you know, that it's not already buckled over the papers, you know, kind of, you know, it's flat, as flat as I can. So I'm holding it down like this with my hands. And I'm not sticking it to the page at all. I'm sticking it to the backing paper as close as I can to the page. So it doesn't have to be like totally like this. Okay? Of course, the best way is that if you have a paper that is big enough to not need two papers, so you don't need to go as far with the tape. The less area you kind of tape off, the better. But because now nothing is actually confining the paper itself, this method actually causes less buckling. I'm not saying that it's no buckling at all, but it protects well, nothing moves. The backing paper doesn't move. See, and I'm taping this bit off here as well, the corner, like this. So I now have it stuck to paper, and I'm doing the same thing here at the top. So I'm taking another piece of tape that is about that length. And as I said, this one doesn't need to be made. And I'm making sure that the page is flat, that I'm not already. And I'm not taping the page, I'm taping it to the backing paper. And nothing is ideal, you know, it's still, the best method is that, you know, if it's a one-sided book, you just put backing paper there and have the paper on top of it loose. Make sure that the side of the page is, you know, protected. Ideally, if you can go over a little bit of the binding so it wouldn't go into the image, so protect the binding, that would be kind of ideal, because this way the paper can relax and contract and it will dry flatter. But because there's image behind there, and you know, you need to protect it, in this case I wouldn't have probably cared it about that much, but you know, I wanted to kind of demonstrate how I do it. So this is the best way for me, I have found, to protect the page. So essentially the only place that the tape is actually touching the paper is, the page is here in the corners, where that little diagonally running piece of tape is. And it holds everything in place. You know, it holds the, you know, it makes sure that the backing paper doesn't move, that it stays here, you know, as close as it can to the binding. But yes, you know, because the paper can't relax back and forth, you know, it's not absolutely ideal, but I think it's one of the best methods. And usually, you know, unless you go really aggressive here with the brush at the top, it doesn't go to the next page either. This is just something that you need to keep in mind. Basically, you know, I know that I keep forgetting about it because I get carried away with water. I get, you know, really happy working really wet on the paper. And most of you probably are going to be much more mindful and much more careful. Just be careful, especially at the top when you are, you know, working the paint here, that you know, kind of don't do this constantly, you know. Because this way you are essentially pushing the paint from your brush underneath the paper, and you are going to get, even, you know, taped off like this, often you will get the paint to the next page. So let's see, what does that Daniel Smith watercolor ground do for us? Or does it do anything for us? And I can see that at the top I have not put the medium. Can you see how at the top the color of the page is different with water? I don't know if you can in this light. I have clearly not put as even layer as I should have of the watercolor medium there, so it is going to sink there at the top. It seems to be a little bit different here, but yeah, I can still see, you know, how the water is going through even with the watercolor medium here. We'll see if there's any use of doing what I'm doing. But as I have said, even with bad paper, this method usually works somewhat. That, you know, if you get the whole paper wet, even if it goes through, but because the paper is wet, you're still able to kind of blend the watercolor somewhat on the page. But of course I won't be able to do what I wanted to do, so most likely this is the page that will never get finished. But, you know, that's not what experiments are about. I just wanted to see how well this medium, you know, works on different papers. I could feel that it's on the surface of the paper, but does it really matter, you know? Does it help us? Let's start with this cadmium lemon. These are rosa paints, rosa gallery paints, and they are beautiful, very vibrant. And, you know, this is the first wash, meaning it goes over everything. I'm not trying to avoid anything or kind of, but I will have to make more sure that the sun, you know, that the bright, which is cadmium yellow deep, but kind of this orangey yellow, doesn't go into the sun. But I will, yeah, I can, you know, this is, I can pick things up and fix them. There we go. Can be done with a smaller brush afterwards, but I'll put just more cadmium yellow there a little bit later. Actually, I can do it now, might as well. Just make it stronger here. Now, and I'm going to take flame red, which to me looks a bit like vermilion. Yeah, it does seem to give this layer of almost a resist, because the paint should, it's not awful, but it could be better, and I'm pretty sure it's going, because I'm working now. See how wet I'm working at the top? this is just me being, you know, super loose with watercolors, but it often does result in the paper, you know, the paint going through to the next page. Editing Oxic here now, a couple of days later. I have to say, so far, the Daniel Smith watercolor ground seems to be the best one of the other options I've tried. That includes satin glazing and gessos. It does seem to act almost like a sizing to the paper. So, you know, the paint doesn't just sit on the top. It has some absorbency, but at the same time, there's some resist. So yeah, pleasantly surprised in that sense. But as you can see that I have not applied it evenly. So the top, you know, as I was working, I saw that the top was going to leak through anyway. You know, I just hadn't done a very good job of applying it there at the top. So I got fairly sloppy there. You can see how I'm doing exactly what I kept explaining to you not to do at the top. I keep going over the top of the page and kind of keep pulling the paint. Can you see that? You know, to underneath the page. And that is exactly, you know, how you get the back of the page messy. I will show you at the end of the video a method or kind of a tip or trick how to kind of avoid that as best as possible. But here, obviously, I wasn't really bothered. So, you know, but the result came out pretty cool. So I'm not particularly bothered, and I think I might even go back and finish that page. So yes, based on this experience at least, I think I can recommend Daniel Smith Watercolor Ground. This demonstration wasn't now that much about, you know, not how to get the paint behind the paper, because I knew that with this paper things were going to go through pretty much most likely anyway because of the nature of the paper, but to show you how this method of securing the paper, how it causes very little buckling and lets the paper relax fairly well. You can see here in the corner, I don't know if you can really see, you know, there's a slight bit of a lift, you know, where the paper kind of wants to go further, you know, stretch itself out, but it's very little. And if you let the paper just rest, don't do anything, it'll just, you know, as it dries, it'll straighten itself out because it is evenly wet. So, you know, this is I find really good method. And you can see, you know, how good it is for me to have a really wide strip of masking tape next to the page, because I do tend to be loose and not very careful when I'm doing the base. So, you know, there's paint all over this strip. And if it was any narrower, I would have had the paint on the next page here as well. So this is why I find this method of securing paper very good. Now, if you want to really protect the top, in this instance, I wasn't really trying to do that, so I can't really say and show you, you know, see, you know, it worked out perfect. It's probably going to be true everywhere because I can, you know, pretty much see everything through the paper. It's not going to be clean behind, so I can't really, you know, demonstrate with this specific page. But if you want to protect, like I keep saying, you know, that one of the big dangers is just pulling the paint behind the top of your page while you're working with your brush, you know, upside down doing big washes here. You kind of put, you know, work on the edge and you keep pushing the paint underneath. The way to conquer that, if you really want to kind of save yourself that, is flip your book, work like this. You know, when you work in the sky, work like this, and this way you don't go this way, you don't go upwards, you work downwards. Your brush will go this way, maybe it goes a bit sideways, but it's much easier if you work like this way, not to get the paint underneath the top of the page here. And once you've done the top of the page and you're getting to, you know, working to the bottom or the sides, just flip the book wherever you are, flip, you know, Okay, I'm working maybe at this side and I'm working this way, so the brush, you know, you have more control that way if you're working with the edge facing you like this. And then as you get to the bottom, you flip the book again right way around and you work it this way. I should have probably, you know, shown that to you, but I didn't, of course, think of it because I was mainly concentrating on trying to get this gradient down and to see how this medium works. Now, one thing about masking tape, now don't disturb it. Leave this, especially if you do a really wet wash like this, which you mostly don't probably, but you know, if you do something like this, and even if you don't, even if it's just slightly wet, leave it alone. Don't go touching it while it's wet or even when it's slightly damp. Before you remove the masking tape, the paper has to be bone dry, you know, so leave it for a day. Leave it until next morning at least, and then remove the masking tape. And once again, really, you know, unless you're in dead hurry, don't try to dry it with your hairdryer or your heat gun. It'll make the page buckle pretty badly, especially if it's super wet like that. And you know, in those two methods I showed you know, the main methods, how to protect the page behind. If you're working with sensible amounts of water, if you don't flood the page, I don't always flood the page either, you know, I don't always get it super wet like that. If you work with in any way sensible amounts of water, then this, you know, both of these methods will be perfectly adequate, and you know, in most cases they will keep your book reasonably clean. There will always be, you know, there's never an absolute protection. There will be instances when, you know, things just go wrong, you know, some tape comes loose from somewhere a little bit, or you know, it buckles off the tape, and there you go, you have a leak to underneath the page. I can't, you know, there's nothing really I can say about that or help it, you know, there's no way. If you want to work with watercolor in your books, you kind of have to take a risk a little bit. It is not the most kind of a, you know, the safest method, you know, unless you want to just work with pencils, you know, in dry media and, you know, play it super safe. You will occasionally have a little bit of an accident, but you know, take them more like kind of a creative opportunities, you know, because then you can go and see, okay, I have this thing at the back of the page now, what can I do, you know, and what sort of ideas does it give me, you know, what can I do to, you know, claim that stain or cover that stain, and it actually can give you really cool creative moments and fun ideas, and the page at the back can actually come out super cool because of that. So just take it as a creative opportunity. This is what I'm saying. Okay, so I hope you're having a wonderful creative time. Have fun with your pages, have fun with your paints, your pencils, all the fantastic medium that is at your fingertips. Have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, whatever the time is in your corner of the world. If you like my videos, like and subscribe, leave a comment. If you have any suggestions or ideas or opinions, just put them into the comments. I'd be very happy to read them. And you know, if you have any wisdom to impart, also super happy to read it, and new knowledge is always welcome. So have, you know, everything best for you, and bye bye.